My name is Emma, and I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding. Not because I couldn't go, but because I wasn't wanted there. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, stay with me, because this story might hit closer than you expect. I've read that message 5 times, maybe more, and it still doesn't make sense. Guest list finalized. We had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Tough cuts? I kept staring at my phone, waiting for something, another message, a correction, a simple wrong person. But nothing came. Just that one sentence, sitting there like it belonged to someone else's life. Because I'm not a distant relative. I'm not an old friend she barely remembers. I'm her sister. And somehow, I didn't make the list. The shock didn't explode, it crept in slowly, cold and quiet, tightening around my chest. I let out a small hollow laugh because if I didn't, I think I would have fallen apart right there. Because a part of me still believed she wouldn't do this to me. So I called my mom. She picked up almost instantly, her voice light, casual, like nothing had happened. For a second, I felt relief. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. Mom, I just got a message. She says I'm not invited. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. Oh, honey, she sighed softly, that same tone she always used when she thought I was overreacting. It's just a wedding. Don't make this a big deal. Just a wedding. Something inside me went completely quiet. I opened Instagram without thinking, and there it was her post. Smiling, glowing, surrounded by people. I started scrolling. 20, 50, 100, more than 100 guests, friends, coworkers, people I barely recognized, but not me. And that's when it finally landed, not sharp, but heavy enough to stay. This wasn't about space. This wasn't about tough cuts. This was a choice. She didn't forget me. She chose not to include me. If you've ever been the one who always showed up and still got left out, I want to hear your story in the comments. And if this feels a little too real, you might want to stay because what happened next I didn't see coming either. Just a wedding. That was a sentence that stayed in the air long after the call should have ended, pressing down on my chest like something I couldn't quite breathe past. I didn't hang up. I couldn't. I just stood there with the phone in my hand, listening to the silence, waiting, hoping she'd say something else. Something that sounded like she understood what this actually felt like. But she didn't. Emma, you're taking this too personally, she said, softer now, almost patient, like she was explaining something simple to a child. They had to make decisions. You know how weddings are. Too personally. My throat tightened. I'm her sister, I said, holding on to whatever calm I had left. How is this not personal? A pause. Not confused. Not surprised. Just dismissive. It's not about you, she replied, a quiet sigh slipping through. You always do this. You make things bigger than they need to be. You always do this. I felt that one land deeper than the rest, because suddenly this wasn't just about the wedding. This was something older, familiar, a script I hadn't realized I'd been following for years. Too sensitive, too emotional, too much. And just like that, I wasn't the sister who had been left out. I was the problem. The one who overreacts, the one who needs to calm down, the one whose feelings are always just a little inconvenient. Funny, I said before I could stop myself, my voice quieter now but sharper. I only overreact when it's me who's being hurt. Silence. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, that landed. But then she exhaled, slow and tired. You're focusing on the wrong thing. This day is about your sister, not about you. Can't you just be happy for her? Be happy for her. Something shifted again, but this time it burned. Because somehow, without me even noticing when it happened, the conversation had turned. I wasn't the one who had been left out anymore. I was the difficult one, the selfish one, the one making everything harder than it needed to be. I am happy for her, I said, and I meant it, or at least I used to. But that doesn't mean this doesn't hurt. There it was. The truth. Simple, honest, and it landed like nothing. Emma, she sighed again, longer this time, heavier. You're being dramatic. It's just one day. You're acting like she cut you out of her life. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my temple, trying to slow everything down, because this wasn't about logic anymore. Every word I said felt like it was being twisted into something else, something exaggerated, something unreasonable. That's not what I said, I whispered. But that's how you're acting, she replied immediately. And just like that, I felt it shift again. I wasn't explaining anymore. I was defending, justifying, trying to prove that my reaction, my completely normal human reaction, was valid. And the more I tried, the smaller I felt, like I was shrinking inside a conversation that was never meant to hear me in the first place. All the times I showed up for her suddenly didn't count. The late night calls, the drives across town, the moments I stayed when everyone else left. None of that was too much. None of that was dramatic. But this one moment where I said this hurts, that was the problem. I just thought I started, but the words caught somewhere in my chest. I didn't even know how to finish that sentence anymore. I just thought I mattered. I just thought I belonged. I just thought I wasn't optional. But I didn't say any of that out loud because suddenly I saw it clearly. This conversation wasn't about understanding me. It wasn't about fixing anything. It was about making me smaller, quieter, easier to dismiss. Okay, I said finally, my voice barely there. Good, she replied quickly, relief slipping into her tone. I knew you'd come around. Come around. I didn't correct her. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Because something inside me had already gone quiet, but not the same way as before. Not confused, not shocked, just done. Being left out hurt, but being told it shouldn't hurt, that's what broke something in me. And for the first time, I stopped trying to fix it and started wondering what it would feel like to just walk away. And for the first time, I stopped trying to fix it and started wondering what it would feel like to just walk away. That thought didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for years, quietly, patiently, layer by layer, in ways I hadn't fully seen until now. Because the truth is, I had always been the one who stayed, the one who showed up, the one who made things easier for everyone else, even when it cost me something I never stopped to measure. I thought about the first time Emily called me in the middle of the night, her voice shaking, saying she couldn't stay in her apartment anymore. I didn't ask questions. I didn't hesitate. I got in my car, drove across town, and spent the next 6 hours helping her pack everything she could carry. Boxes, clothes, pieces of a life falling apart in real time. She cried. I listened. She broke down. I held her together. By sunrise, she was in my guest room, and I told her she could stay as long as she needed. And not once did anyone ask if I was okay. I didn't think of that as sacrifice. I thought of it as being a good sister. Then there was the time she lost her job. Rent was due, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't even have to ask directly. I could hear it in her voice, in the pauses, in the way she avoided the subject. So I stepped in. I covered half her rent for 3 months. Quietly, no conditions, no reminders, because that's what you do for family, right? And again, no one asked what that cost me. And when her last relationship fell apart, the one she swore was different, I was there again. Sitting on her kitchen floor at 2 in the morning, listening to her replay every moment, every word, every what if, I told her she'd be okay. I told her she deserved better. I helped her believe it when she couldn't on her own. I was always there in the moments that mattered. But standing there now, phone still in my hand, my mom's voice echoing in my head, those memories didn't feel the same anymore. Not warmer, not comforting, just clearer. Because none of those moments had ever been questioned. No one called me dramatic when I showed up. No one said I was too much when I was the one fixing things, holding everything together, making life easier for everyone else. Back then, being that person was convenient, expected, even appreciated at least on the surface. But the second I needed something as simple as being included, as being seen, suddenly I was too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too difficult. And that's when it finally clicked. It wasn't that I had changed, it was that my role had, I was never the one they protected. I was the one they relied on, the one who absorbed things, smoothed things over, kept everything from falling apart. And as long as I stayed in that role, kept giving, kept understanding, kept making excuses, it worked perfectly for everyone. Except me. A slow, heavy kind of hurt settled in, not sharp like before, but deeper. The kind that comes when you realize something you've believed for years might not have been true. I wasn't being valued, I was being relied on. And those are not the same thing. Not in the way that matters. Not in the way that stays. Because when you're valued, people make space for you. When you're just relied on, they only notice you when they need something. And suddenly, everything made sense. Why I was always the one expected to understand. Why my feelings were always the ones that needed adjusting. Why being left out could be dismissed so easily. Because in their version of things, I was never supposed to need anything back. I lowered my phone slowly, staring at the blank screen, and for the first time, I didn't feel confused anymore, just tired. Tired of being the one who gave more than she ever got. Tired of being the one who understood everything except her own worth. And maybe that was the real problem. Because the moment I saw it clearly, I couldn't unsee it. And for the first time, I started thinking, what if I just didn't show up this time? What if I just didn't show up this time? The question didn't feel dramatic or rebellious. It felt quiet, almost logical, in a way that unsettled me. Because for once, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't rehearsing what to say to smooth things over or make myself easier to accept. I was just sitting with the idea that maybe I didn't have to go, and the longer I let that thought stay, the clearer everything became. They had already made their decision. They had already chosen a version of that date that didn't include me. So why was I still trying to force myself into a place I had already been removed from? Why was I still trying to prove I deserved to be there? I wasn't uninvited. I was never invited at all. And somehow, that realization didn't break me this time. It did something else. It straightened something inside me, like a line that had been bent for years, finally snapping back into place. So I didn't call back. I didn't text. I didn't argue. For the first time, I didn't try to explain why I was hurt or convince anyone that my feelings were valid. I just stopped. And then, almost without thinking, I opened a different app, Flights. The word felt strange under my fingertips, like I was stepping into a version of my life I had never allowed myself to have. I hesitated for a second, staring at the search bar, wondering where I would even go. And then I realized maybe that was the point anywhere but there. I typed in a destination I had once looked up months ago and immediately closed because it felt too expensive, too indulgent, too unnecessary. A five-star resort by the ocean, white sand, clear water, the kind of place you save for someday, for when everything else in your life is already taken care of. And for a moment, I just stared at the results because it didn't feel like something meant for me. It felt like something meant for people who didn't have to justify wanting something good. My finger hovered over the screen, and that voice showed up. the familiar one, the one that had been shaping my choices for years, telling me this was too much, that I didn't need it, that I shouldn't spend that kind of money, that I should think about what everyone else would say. And I felt my chest tighten, not with doubt, but with recognition. Because that voice wasn't new, it was the same voice that had kept me in place for so long, the one that told me to be reasonable, to be understanding, to be less demanding, less emotional, less me, and for the first time I didn't listen to it. I tapped the screen, selected the flight, selected the room, ocean view, all inclusive, and every click felt like I was choosing myself for the first time, like I was crossing invisible lines I didn't even know existed, and with every step, something inside me shifted. The anger that had been sitting under my skin didn't disappear. It transformed into something steadier, something that felt like movement, like I was finally going somewhere instead of standing still. By the time I reached the final page, my hands were steady, confirm booking, two simple words, and I knew this was the moment where I could still back out, close the app, go back to being who I had always been, the one who showed up, the one who made it work, the one who accepted being overlooked because it was easier than confronting it. Or I could choose something else, not them, not the wedding, not the version of myself they expected. Me. So before I could overthink it, I pressed down, confirmed, the screen refreshed, the email arrived, dates, flight number, reservation details, everything locked in, and I just sat there for a second staring at it, waiting for regret, for panic, for second thoughts. But what came instead was quiet, not empty, peaceful, a slow, unfamiliar lightness spreading through me, like I had just put something down that I didn't even realize I had been carrying for years. I wasn't going to the wedding, not because I couldn't, but because I chose not to. And that difference mattered more than I expected because for so long, every decision I made had revolved around other people. What they needed, what they expected, what would keep things from falling apart. And now, for the first time, I had made a decision that didn't center them at all. It centered me. And that felt different, stronger, real in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I leaned back slightly, letting out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The anger was still there, but it wasn't controlling me anymore. It had done its job, it had pushed me to see things clearly, and now in its place there was something else: control, freedom, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was finally choosing my own life. I just didn't know yet what that choice was about to cost me. I just didn't know yet what that choice was about to cost me, but for once, I didn't care enough to stop myself, and everything that followed felt strangely effortless, like I had stepped into a version of my life where the decision had already been made, and all I had to do was catch up to it. And before I could second guess anything, I was at the airport, suitcase rolling behind me, boarding pass in my hand, watching people move past me with purpose, with destinations, with lives that didn't include hesitation. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what I was leaving behind. I was thinking about where I was going. When the plane lifted off the ground, I leaned back and watched the city shrink beneath me, streets collapsing into lines, buildings dissolving into shapes, and something about that moment felt quieter than I expected, almost detached, because nothing down there was pulling me back anymore, not in the way it used to, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about that. Hours later, when I stepped out into the warm air, the kind that carries salt and sunlight in equal measure, I paused just long enough to let it settle into me, like my body needed proof that this was real, that I had actually done this, that I had chosen this. And as the car drove me along the coast, palm trees passing in a slow rhythm, light flashing off the water, everything felt open in a way my life hadn't felt in years. When we pulled up to the resort and someone opened the door for me, greeting me with a smile that didn't question whether I belonged there. It hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. Not overwhelming, not dramatic, just steady, like something inside me was finally allowed to rest, which was strange because I had never felt that way at home. The lobby was filled with light, quiet movement, soft voices, nothing urgent, nothing demanding, and when I heard my name spoken back to me at check in, without hesitation, without doubt, I felt something loosen in my chest that I didn't even realize had been tight. When I stepped into my room and saw the ocean stretching endlessly beyond the glass, the balcony open to the sound of waves, I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't move at all. I just stood there, taking it in, because for the first time, I was somewhere no one had placed me, no one had invited me to, no one expected anything from me in. I was there because I chose to be. I stepped out onto the balcony, let the breeze move through my hair, through the quiet space around me, and realized there was nothing waiting for me, nothing I had to fix, nothing I had to explain, and it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I spent the afternoon doing almost nothing, sitting by the water, letting the sun warm my skin, watching people move around me without feeling like I had to be part of anything. And every now and then the thought of the wedding crossed my mind, but it didn't land the same way anymore. It didn't twist or pull, it just passed through, like something distant, something that no longer had a claim on me. At some point, I picked up my phone, opened my camera, and took a picture. The ocean behind me, the light catching just right. And I stared at it for a second before typing a caption, something simple, something almost careless. Guess I got cut from the guest list, but I think I'll survive. And I paused for just a second, not because I was unsure, but because I knew exactly what it meant. It wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about making a statement they would understand. It was quieter than that, more personal. It was me acknowledging that I wasn't where they expected me to be, and I was okay with that. I posted it, locked my phone, and set it down without checking for reactions, without waiting for messages, because for once, I didn't need to know how anyone else felt about what I was doing. As the evening came in, the sky shifting into colors that didn't feel real, I found myself smiling without thinking about it. Not because everything was perfect, not because nothing hurt anymore, but because the weight wasn't there, the constant pull to adjust myself, to shrink, to make things easier for everyone else. It was gone, even if just for a moment. And that moment was enough. I ordered dinner, sat by the water, and let myself enjoy it without questioning whether I deserved it, without calculating what it cost, and the satisfaction that settled in wasn't loud or triumphant. It was steady, grounded, the kind that comes from finally choosing yourself without apology. Somewhere, miles away, I knew things were unfolding. Conversations, reactions, maybe anger, maybe confusion, maybe blame. But here, none of it could reach me. Not in the same way, not anymore, and that contrast, the quiet here against whatever chaos was building there, only made the feeling clearer. I wasn't escaping. I had stepped out. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting to be pulled back in. I just didn't realize yet they were already trying to. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting to be pulled back in. I just didn't realize yet they were already trying to. It started quietly, almost easy to ignore. A single vibration against the table. My phone lighting up beside my drink while the ocean stretched out in front of me like nothing in the world could reach this place, and for a second I didn't move. I just let it ring, watching the screen glow and fade, telling myself it could wait, that whatever it was, it didn't belong to me right now. But then it buzzed again, and again, and again, until the rhythm became impossible to ignore, a pattern that felt too familiar, too practiced, like something I had answered my entire life without ever questioning it. When I finally turned the screen over, my stomach tightened not from panic this time, but from recognition. Mom, Emily, unknown number, mom again. It didn't stop. Call after call, stacking on top of each other, like urgency alone could pull me back into a place I had already stepped out of, and for a second, I just stared at it. Not reacting, not reaching, just noticing the difference. I wasn't rushing to answer anymore. I let it ring a few more times before unlocking the screen. Not because I felt obligated, but because I was curious. And that alone felt new, like I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing when to engage. The messages came in fast, almost on top of each other. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? This is not funny, Emma. And then Emily, right on cue, I can't believe you're doing this right now. I read each one slowly, letting the words exist without immediately trying to soften them, fix them, or make them easier to respond to. And for a moment, the old instinct flickered, that pull to explain myself, to justify, to calm everything down before it escalated. But this time, it didn't take over. More messages followed, sharper now, more direct. You're being selfish. This is your sister's wedding. You're acting like a child. And I felt it. That old pressure pressing against the same places it always had. The guilt, the responsibility, the version of me that used to bend instantly just to make it stop. But something about it felt different now, like the words were landing but not sticking. Selfish. I read it again, letting it sit, and instead of reacting, I questioned it. Selfish for what? For not showing up somewhere I was never wanted? For not begging for a place that had already been taken from me? For choosing myself once after years of choosing everyone else? The word didn't feel accurate anymore. It felt misplaced, like it belonged to a version of me I had already outgrown. Another call came through, and this time I answered not because I felt pulled in, but because I wanted to hear it, to see if anything had actually changed on the other end. Emma. My mom's voice came through immediately, tight, controlled, already carrying frustration. What are you doing? I leaned back slightly, letting the sound of the ocean fill the space between us. Steady, grounding. I'm on vacation, I said simply, my voice calm in a way I didn't have to force. There was a pause, then a sharp exhale. Vacation? Right now? Are you serious? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't have one, but because I didn't feel the need to rush anymore. Emma, this is your sister's wedding, she continued, her voice rising. And instead of being here, you're, what, sitting on a beach somewhere? Do you hear how that sounds? I did. I heard it clearly. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend it. It sounds like I'm not where I wasn't invited to be, I replied, steady, almost detached, and the silence on the other end stretched longer this time, heavier. You're making this about you again, she snapped. Patience gone now. This isn't about you, it's about family, and right now, you're acting incredibly selfish. There it was again, that word, and something in me almost smiled at how predictable it was. Funny, I said quietly, not raising my voice, not pushing back harder than I needed to. I was only mature when I was the one fixing everything. The silence that followed was different, not confused, not explosive, just exposed. If choosing myself for once makes me selfish, I continued, my voice still calm, still grounded, then maybe I should have been selfish a long time ago. The words didn't shake. I didn't rush them. I didn't take them back. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting to see how they would be received. I don't even recognize you right now, she said finally, her voice softer now, edged with disappointment, the kind that used to undo me completely. But now, it didn't. Because for the first time, I was starting to realize that maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Yeah, I said quietly, almost to myself. I don't think I do either. I ended the call before she could respond. not out of anger, not out of defiance, but because I didn't need to stay in that conversation anymore. And as the screen went dark, I sat there for a second, waiting for the guilt, for the second guessing, for that familiar collapse back into who I used to be, but it didn't come. What came instead was something quieter, steadier, something I hadn't expected. Distance. Not physical, emotional. Like their words were reaching me from further away than they used to. Like I could hear them without being pulled into them. My phone buzzed again. Another message, another attempt, but this time I didn't pick it up right away. I just let it sit there beside me while the waves kept moving, steady, unchanged, and for the first time, I realized something that settled deeper than anything they had said. They hadn't changed. Their reactions hadn't changed. The only thing that had changed was me. And that was why none of this was working the way it used to. And that's when it hit me if this was how they reacted when I finally said no. I wasn't even ready for what they were about to do next. And that's when it hit me if this was how they reacted. When I finally said no, I wasn't even ready for what they were about to do next. I didn't have to wait long to find out. It started with a single message that felt different from the rest, not demanding, not accusing, just urgent. My phone buzzed again, but this time I picked it up, more out of curiosity than concern, and saw a text from a number I almost didn't recognize at first. It was one of my cousins. Call me. Now. You need to hear this. There was no judgment in it, no guilt, just something sharper, something that didn't fit the pattern I had been ignoring all afternoon, and for a second I hesitated, staring at the words, wondering if I even wanted to step back into whatever was unfolding on the other side. But curiosity won. It always does. I stepped away from the edge of the water, answering the call as I moved, the sound of the ocean fading slightly behind me. Emma, my cousin's voice came through, half breathless, half disbelieving. You are not going to believe what just happened. I didn't respond right away, but something in my chest shifted, a quiet sense of anticipation I didn't quite understand yet. What? I asked, my voice steady, calmer than I expected it to be. There was a short pause, like she was deciding how to say it, or maybe still trying to process it herself. The wedding. It's falling apart. I stopped walking. Completely still. What do you mean? I asked. Slower this time, my grip tightening slightly around the phone. I mean, she let out a small, almost incredulous laugh. The groom just left. Like, walked out. In the middle of everything. For a second, I didn't say anything. The words didn't land all at once. They unfolded slowly, piece by piece, like my mind was trying to catch up to something it hadn't prepared for. He left, I repeated, not because I hadn't heard her, but because I needed to hear it again to believe it. Yeah, she said, and now there was something else in her voice, something between shock and a kind of chaotic disbelief. There was a fight. I don't even know about what exactly, but it got loud. People were staring, and then he just walked out. Didn't come back. No explanation. Nothing. I leaned against the railing without realizing it. The ocean stretching out in front of me, calm and endless, completely untouched by whatever was unraveling miles away, and the contrast was almost surreal. And? I asked quietly. And everything just spiraled, she continued, words coming faster now, like she had been holding them in. Your mom is freaking out. Emily is crying. People are arguing, like actually arguing, not the polite kind. The venue cut the music. Half the guests are leaving. It's it's a mess, Emma. A mess. I could picture it without being there. The tension, the noise, the carefully planned day cracking apart in real time, everything they had tried so hard to control, slipping out of their hands, and for a moment I just stood there, listening, letting the image settle. And now, she added almost as an afterthought, they're trying to get in touch with you, like, really trying. I let out a slow breath, my gaze drifting back to the horizon, the water catching the last light of the day, steady, untouched, and something about that moment felt strangely balanced. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just aligned in a way I hadn't expected. Of course they are, I said quietly, because suddenly it made sense. I could already hear it. The shift in tone that would come next, the urgency, the expectation, the unspoken assumption that I would step back in, fix it, hold it together the way I always had. But I didn't feel that pull this time. Not in the same way. What I felt instead was something quieter. Something I almost didn't want to name because it didn't feel entirely fair. Not joy, not satisfaction, but something close to it, a small fleeting sense of release, like something had finally broken that I had spent years trying to hold together. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't react the way they might have expected. But standing there, miles away from the chaos, with the sound of the ocean steady in my ears, I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. The moment I stopped showing up, everything didn't just fall apart. It revealed what had been fragile all along. And for the first time, I wasn't the one standing in the middle of it, trying to keep it from collapsing. And for the first time, I wasn't the one standing in the middle of it, trying to keep it from collapsing. I thought that would be the end of it, that the chaos would stay where it belonged, miles away from me, but I should have known better, because things like that don't end cleanly, they just find quieter ways to reach you. My phone buzzed again, softer this time. Not the frantic rhythm from before, but a single message that somehow felt heavier than all the others combined. And when I picked it up, I already knew who it was before I even saw the name. Emily. I let it sit there for a second, not because I was surprised, but because I understood what it meant now in a way I hadn't before, and when I finally opened it, the message was exactly what I expected. Simple, stripped of everything it had been carrying earlier. Can you please call me? No blame, no anger, just that. Careful, measured, different. I exhaled slowly, something almost like a quiet, tired smile forming without meaning to. Because of course it had shifted. Of course the tone had changed the moment things stopped going her way. I tapped the message open fully. I don't know what to do. Everything is falling apart. I need you. I read it once, then again, not because I didn't understand it, but because I recognized it too well. That same tone, that same pattern I had answered my entire life without questioning. The moment something broke, the moment things became too much, I was the one she reached for. I could almost hear her voice behind the words. The same urgency, the same expectation that I would step in and make it manageable again. And for a second, everything slowed, the ocean still moving in front of me, steady, unchanged, while the rest of it replayed in my mind. The missed calls, the messages calling me selfish, the voices telling me I was overreacting. And now, this. I need you. It didn't land the same way anymore. Not as a pull, not as a responsibility, but as something else entirely. Something clearer, almost ironic. Because suddenly, the pattern wasn't just visible, it was undeniable. When I was hurt, it was just a wedding. When I stepped away, I was selfish. But the moment everything started falling apart, I was needed again. I didn't feel anger the way I thought I would. I didn't feel satisfaction either. What I felt was something steadier, something sharper, clarity. I typed a response slowly, not rushing, not overthinking, just choosing my words, the way I had learned to choose my silence. What happened? I sent it, then watched the typing bubble appear almost instantly, disappear, then come back again like she didn't know where to begin. He left. I don't even know why. Everyone is fighting. Mom is freaking out. I can't deal with this. Please, can you just come back? I read the last line twice. can you just come back? And that was the moment it fully clicked. The simplicity of it, the way it sounded like a request, but carried the weight of something else entirely, something I had accepted for years without noticing. It wasn't really a question, it was an expectation. I looked out at the water again, letting the silence stretch just long enough for me to feel the difference, because the old version of me would have already been moving, already searching for flights, already figuring out how to fix something that had never been mine to hold together in the first place. But this time, I didn't move. Emma? Another message came through, faster now, more urgent. I really need you right now. I let out a slow breath, steady, grounded, and for the first time, I didn't soften what I was seeing. It was never about me. It was about what I could do, what I could carry, what I could fix. And now that everything was breaking, they were reaching for the same person they had just pushed away. I didn't feel cruel. I just finally felt honest. Because for the first time, I realized it was never mine to fix. I typed again, slower this time. I'm sorry you're going through that. I paused, reading it once, making sure it said exactly what I meant, nothing more, nothing less. Then I added one more line. But I can't fix this for you. My finger hovered for a second before pressing send, not out of hesitation, but because I understood what it meant now, not just for this moment, but for everything after it. And when the message went through, I didn't feel the guilt I had spent years expecting. I didn't feel the need to explain myself or soften the impact. I just stood there, listening to the ocean, steady and unchanged, and felt something settle into place inside me that I knew wouldn't shift back. They didn't need me. They needed what I did for them. And for the first time, I wasn't giving it. And maybe that was the real difference now. They weren't losing me. They were losing control over me. And maybe that was the real difference now. They weren't losing me, they were losing control over me. The realization didn't come with noise or hesitation, it settled quietly, firmly, like something final clicking into place. I stared at the screen for a moment after my message was delivered, watching the tiny read indicator appear, disappear, then reappear as if the weight of my words had to be processed more than once. Then the replies came, faster this time, less careful. Emma, please don't do this. This isn't the time. We need you. Not I need you. Not I'm sorry. Just we need you. And that was enough. It told me everything I needed to know. I didn't feel the rush of emotion I might have expected. No anger. No guilt. No second thoughts. Just a quiet, steady distance that made everything easier to see for what it was. This wasn't about connection. It was about function. About a role I had played for so long that they no longer questioned whether I wanted it, they just assumed I would step back into it when called. I read each message slowly, without urgency, without reacting. The way you read something that no longer has the power to change you, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to answer. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I finally understood that nothing I said would change what this was. I had already said what mattered. I had already stepped out. Anything after that would only pull me back into a conversation I no longer belonged to. Another call came through. Then another. The screen lit up again and again, the same names, the same pattern, the same attempt to reach me in the only way they knew how, through urgency, through pressure, through the expectation that I would eventually give in. I watched it happen without moving, without picking it up, without letting it pull at anything inside me. Because it didn't. Not anymore. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second, not in hesitation but in decision. Then, slowly, deliberately, I opened the settings. One tap, silence unknown callers. Another tap, block contact, Emily. Pause. Then mom. Then the rest, one by one, not rushed, not emotional, just done. Each name disappearing from my screen felt less like loss and more like clarity, like removing something that had been cluttering my space for so long. I hadn't realized how heavy it was. When I finished, the phone in my hand felt lighter, not physically, but in a way I couldn't ignore. I set it down beside me and looked out at the ocean again. The same steady rhythm, the same quiet movement, untouched by anything that had just happened. And for a moment, I just stood there, not thinking, not analyzing, just feeling the absence of something that had always been there before. The pull, the urgency, the need to respond. It was gone. What replaced it wasn't relief in the way I had imagined. It wasn't warm or comforting. It was colder than that, cleaner. Like a space that had been cleared out completely, leaving nothing behind to hold on to. And somehow, that felt right. Because this wasn't a reaction anymore. It wasn't about proving a point or making them understand. It was a decision. A quiet, irreversible one. I wasn't going back. Not to the wedding, not to the role, not to the version of myself that existed only to fix what other people broke. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. The silence around me said it clearly enough. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for anything to come next. I wasn't bracing for the fallout or preparing for the next call. I had stepped out, and this time I had closed the door behind me. And I had closed the door behind me. What happened next didn't arrive as a dramatic ending. Not the kind you picture when everything finally breaks, it came in fragments, updates that felt distant, almost unreal, like watching a storm from far out at sea where you can see the lightning but never feel the rain. A message from my cousin later that night, then another the next morning. Short, scattered pieces of a day that had unraveled faster than anyone expected. Guests leaving early. Arguments that didn't stay quiet. Voices raised in rooms that were supposed to hold celebration. Plans collapsing in real time, not because of one moment, but because everything underneath it had already been fragile long before anyone noticed. I read the messages without urgency, without the pull to step in and make sense of it. And what struck me wasn't the chaos itself, it was how familiar the pattern felt, just without me in the middle of it this time. Because for years, I had been the one absorbing it, smoothing it over, turning something broken into something manageable. And now, without that role being filled, nothing held. It didn't feel like revenge. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like truth. Quiet, unavoidable truth revealing itself without my help. I spent the morning by the water, the sun just high enough to warm the air without pressing down, the sound of the waves steady, unchanged, like none of it mattered here, and maybe that was the point. For the first time, I wasn't carrying anything that didn't belong to me. No tension sitting in my chest. No need to check my phone every few minutes. No mental rehearsal of conversations that hadn't happened yet. Just space. I leaned back in my chair, letting the light settle around me, and realized something that felt almost unfamiliar in its simplicity. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. Not an apology, not an explanation, not a moment where everything would finally make sense. Because it already did. Another message came through at some point. Then, a missed call. Then, silence again. The rhythm was different now, less urgent, less demanding. Like whatever had needed me before was now forced to move without me, to exist without the version of me that used to hold it together. I didn't reach for the phone right away. I didn't feel the need to, because the truth had already settled somewhere deeper than anything they could say. Karma didn't look like punishment. It didn't need me to prove anything or step back in to make it happen. It just unfolded naturally, quietly, inevitably. I stood up and walked closer to the water, letting the edge of the tide reach my feet, cool against my skin, grounding in a way that didn't ask anything from me in return. And for the first time in a long time, the feeling that settled in wasn't heavy or complicated. It was light. Not because everything was perfect, not because nothing had happened, but because I was no longer tied to it. The weight that had followed me for years, the quiet expectation to always be the one who fixed things, who understood, who stayed it was gone, not pushed away, not ignored, just released. I took a slow breath, watching the horizon stretch endlessly in front of me, and felt something close to peace settle into place. Not loud, not overwhelming, just steady. Enough. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully allowed myself to before. I didn't need to fight for space in a place that never made room for me. I didn't need to prove my worth by carrying what wasn't mine. And I didn't need to go back because for the first time, I wasn't just free from them. I was finally free from the version of me that believed I had to stay. And maybe that was the quiet truth I had been moving toward all along. I extended my stay without hesitation, not to run away, but to stay exactly where I felt most like myself, grounded, calm, and finally in control. When another message came asking me to come back and talk, I didn't feel anger anymore, just clarity. So I declined gently but completely. Because this time, I wasn't choosing distance out of hurt. I was choosing peace with intention. The days became slower, lighter, untouched by the tension I used to carry, and I realized something that felt both simple and powerful. You don't have to stay connected to something that keeps breaking you, even if it's called family. That said, every story is different, and this is just one perspective shaped by personal experience, not advice for every situation. If this story resonates with you, I'd really like to hear your honest thoughts. Have you ever had to choose your peace over expectations? Share your story or your perspective below because your voice matters here. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for staying with this journey until the end. If this meant something to you, consider subscribing and following for more real stories and deeper psychological insights. And until the next story, take care of yourself first.